If you have spent years doing the inner work and you're quietly exhausted because that pattern is still running, then I need you to hear this. You see, you probably have done the courses, read the books, maybe the certifications like I have, like you process real things. And underneath it all, there's this belief that you've been carrying quietly, persistently, that if you just go a little deeper, if you find the right modality, if you could just understand yourself a little bit more precisely. I even thought if a lightning bolt would come down and hit me, I would wake up and something would finally click into place. The gap between what you understand and how you actually live will close. That you'll close. And I want to offer you something today. Not more work, not a deeper modality, a different explanation of why that gap between who you know yourself to be and your current reality, why that gap still exists. And it's not what you think. What if the work you've been doing has been completely real, but aimed at the wrong self? Just stick with me for a moment. You see, every personal development approach that I've come across operates on the same foundational assumption that the self who showed up to heal is the self that needs healing. It takes that self and makes it healthier, makes it more regulated, more conscious, more compassionate. But it never asks whose self this is. And here's what I've come to understand. Through my own decades of inner work, decades, and through sitting with women who have done everything right and still fill the gap. The self most women are healing is not their original self. So I want to draw this. So you have this self, this conditioning that you grew up in, and you know yourself, this is who you are. And this self is real. It functions. It achieves. But it was assembled from reflections, observations, expectations of parents, teachers, culture, every environment that shaped you before you had the language for who you actually were. But it's not the original. It's not the original, because in this is your energetic truth. This is who you really are. So over here, we have the conditioned self, or otherwise known as ego, which we all know. Here, though, is the true self, otherwise known as your spirit or your soul. This is your truth. And we've been trying to fix because we see what doesn't align, what doesn't feel good, what doesn't feel like us. So we try to fix it. And that's why the gap is still there. Not because you haven't been trying, because we've been oriented at fixing a problem. And there's something else that I want to name because it matters right now in this specific moment in history. You see, the world is getting louder and it's harder to find yourself in because you have artificial intelligence that can clone a voice, generate a face that never existed. But here's what I want you to hear. Engineer a specific emotional response in your body for someone else's purpose. Now, that's not the point of this video. But if you've been someone who, I lived many years like this, where you spent your life building your sense of self from the outside, from what gets validated, from what the world reflects back, from what your parents, your teachers, your culture told you you had to be, then you're more vulnerable in this time than you ever have been. And you cannot scroll yourself to your own truth, because the ground you're looking for out here, the truth that you're looking for out here, outside of yourself, like you've done your whole life, and there's no criticism or judgment, it just is what we do, it doesn't exist. The truth doesn't exist out here. It's time. It's time, my friends, to recognize where the true truth exists. And I'll give you a hint. You were born with it. It isn't something you've had to create. You were born with it. So I want to speak directly to who might be watching this, because my guess is you're accomplished, you're successful, you're capable. From the outside, your life looks completely right. Externally functional and successful by outside measures. But on the inside, you feel disconnected, internally disconnected. And if I put it in my own words of what I felt for years and years and years, dead, empty inside, pretending I wasn't. Because the world didn't know empty. The world didn't know dead. The world knew normal, successful. But I felt dead inside for decades. Not in crisis, not like falling apart. Because I always explained it as I was in this void. Never really felt the highs, but I never felt the lows. Just this hollowness, this emptiness that was very hard to name, especially when I became the most self-aware person in the room. And you might recognize yourself in that. You can see patterns, but you can't get yourself out of them. You're understanding the self you've been living from is not the truth of who you are. You're beginning to see that, and you're still exhausted by the distance between what you know and how you live. And I have a phrase for this: externally functional, internally disconnected. And if that lands somewhere, just stay with me. Stay with me. So Michelangelo said the sculpture is already in the stone. His job wasn't to create anything. It was to remove everything that wasn't David. Every chip of marble he took away wasn't destruction, it was revelation. He wasn't building David, he was uncovering him. And that's the principle this work is built on. Nothing is wrong with you, my friend. There is nothing to fix. There is only something to remember. Your heartbeat, your signal to reveal. The signal that you've been searching for was never lost. It's just been underneath all of this conditioning, beneath the survival, beneath decades of a self that's assembled by everyone else's reflection, expectation, opinion, validation. And so the work is not for us to fix. You are not a problem. We don't need to fix you. The work is to remove everything that isn't who you really are. Most people, when they first encounter this idea, think the answer is learning to love themselves more. always comes up. Self-love. Self-love is real and it matters. But here's the distinction that's going to change everything for you. You see, self-love asks, how do I feel about myself? And witnessing, it asks, can I see myself truly without flinching, without editing, without needing the image to be different? Can you see yourself truly without needing your image to be different? Because you cannot love what you cannot see. We continue to try and love this because it doesn't feel right and it doesn't seem like us, but we continue to try and love it. And most women and people that come into this work have spent years practicing love directed at this. A self that's assembled by everybody else's expectations. The love is real, but it's pointed at the construction, at the conditioning, at the ego, not at the original. You see, witnessing cuts underneath that. It doesn't ask you to feel differently about yourself. It sees that self all the way to the one who was there before it was built. And it reflects her back. So I want to show you what this actually looks like, not in concept, but as something that happened to a specific person in a specific room. And that person is me. And this is the reason I do what I do. It isn't something that I learned in all those courses. It is what was uncovered. And I believe it's in every one of us. You see, I grew up without an identification to my parents. My biological mother couldn't raise me. My father wasn't in the picture. I was adopted in the family from birth. And my adopted mother, even though she was in the family, she was in my mother's family, my biological mother's family, we didn't look the same. But my adopted mother showed me what it meant to be connected to the earth, to spirit, to something older than religion. She was an amazing role model. She taught me to work hard. She gave me strength. And she passed away when I was 12. And after that, I learned to do what children who aren't witnessed or grow up in that environment learn to do. I put up the walls. I locked this up. I drew from the strength that she taught me. And I looked outside for what the world told me was normal, was successful. I didn't have that modeling when I was young, so I looked out to the world to create it. And I became someone the world could see and name and validate. But underneath all of it, there was this emptiness. And there was this thing that I kept searching for. I didn't know the question exactly. Who am I? Like, I didn't know who I was. I was wearing this mask, playing what the world told me to play, being successful, showing up, but I didn't know who I was. And it was this hunger, this question that drove all the therapy, all the personal development, learning about the brain, the healing work, the retreats, the certification, decades of circling the same center, trying to find something I could name and could not reach. You see, I'm 30% American Indian, Chippewa Cree, heritage on my mother's side. But my father, I learned years later, was German. it had a European background. So I didn't look like my family that I grew up in, that I thought was who I was. And I grew up Catholic. And my Indian heritage and the Catholicism, they never reconciled, because I couldn't show up in that place of that my mother was teaching me of who I was, because the church was telling me who I needed to be. And when my mother passed away, I went to live with a family that was part of the family. I just wasn't that familiar with them, but I had to move to a different city. I had a different school. They had a different culture. Everything that I thought was a sense of who I was stripped away at the moment that she passed away. So, like I said, I looked outside to society, and I spent 2 to 3 decades in that corporate world in the healthcare, successful by every external measure, but quietly, persistently empty. No matter what I achieved, I climbed that corporate ladder. No matter how far I got, I still felt empty. I still felt hollow. I did the work. And I got really good at being the constructed self, the conditioned self. But that feeling and that question never stopped. Why am I here? Who am I? And so a while back, a friend and I went to a metaphysical fair, and we saw an angel reader. My friend's an angel reader, so we both said, let's get a reading from her and see how that's like what you do. So I had no expectations, and I sat down, and this person immediately told me that I was seeing and receiving things that I wasn't understanding, and she was spot on, because I had been. And she said, right now, you're in this state of confusion because you're getting this information, but the information is good, it's valid, it's going to help you, but it's learning what to do with that information. And she recommended a place in London that was reasonably priced, and that would really help me figure out the signal I was getting. And so I went and signed up for a class in London, The Essence of Spirit and Power of Mediumship. Now, I had no intention of becoming a medium, but I wanted to understand the channel. I wanted to understand the information. But I didn't know that I was going to be walking toward the threshold I had been approaching my entire life by going to this class. So I show up for class, and the very first day, we have 2 tutors. They're called mediumship tutors. They're very, very experienced, many, many, many years. And they said that we could sign up for a spiritual assessment. Well, here's me, like, who am I? I want to know who I am. Can you tell me something? And so I signed up. Surprise. I signed up, and I sat across from the main tutor of the class, and her name was Wendy. And within minutes, she was naming things that she had no way of knowing. She knew my Indian heritage. She felt that before I told her. She knew the incident that happened when I was 12, and then she saw the struggle, during my teenage years, that emotional freeze that I went through in my 20s, and the consequence of the grief that really didn't have anywhere to go. And then she went on to tell me about this Indian man that I've been seeing in my meditations. She described a Native American man, and she says it's like he has 2 feathers. I can see 2 feathers out of his head. Now, this is a lady from Scotland who doesn't know about American Indian heritage. She felt the drumming and that shamanic lineage. And she said, this man is your guide, a teacher, a protector. And he calls himself Two Feathers. So here's what's incredible about this story. For over 10 years, I've been seeing him in my meditations. I go to this place in my meditations, and to the left is this forest. And right before I enter the forest is this man that I now know as Two Feathers. Always there, always in the same place, always the same man. I never told anyone because I didn't have a framework for what I was seeing. I actually thought I was like imagining him over and over and over again. And Wendy named him. Like she was so precise. Two Feathers. And she looked at me and she said, and he has a name for you. And he called you the little seer because you've always been able to see. You were the child who felt the room before anyone else spoke, who perceived everything and learned to hide it because it wasn't safe to bring out. You were the little seer who grew up and forgot who she was. And I understood something for the first time sitting in that room. You see, being seen is not about having your feelings validated. We can talk about feelings. It's about having your truth named. The truth that was always there, that you were always carrying, and that no one had ever reflected back with precision. Wendy named what I had been carrying with me for over a decade. And she went on to tell me about guides and what I was here on this earth for. And that is witnessing. And I understood in my body before my mind could catch up what had been missing from every course, every modality that I had ever tried, that I had been meeting it here. I had been trying to fix this. And then, if that wasn't enough, in the same class, it happened again. Every day, we had 3 to 4 times where we were paired with someone in our class. And I was sitting across from a woman from Vietnam who actually was in her 20s during the war, a teenager in 20s. And interestingly enough, Vietnam's had a lot of wars. And so she lived through the war there. And then sometime after COVID, she lost most of her hearing. And so she had to wear this device that I talked into so she could hear me. But even without talking, she and I made a connection I can only describe as strangely familiar. Like we have been in lifetimes together. And so I had done the exercise on her. We always had a specific exercise to do. And she said, I know I'm supposed to do this exercise, but I'm really connected to you and I have to tell you something. You are an advanced soul, the bridge between the divine and the earth. And in an earlier life, right before this one, you were a sage, a teacher with a mission and had many, many followers, and you didn't finish it. And she said, you may be nearing the end of your reincarnations. You need to do everything in your power to focus all of your energy on your mission now. And she looked at me, this woman who had survived the war, who had lost her hearing, who had every reason to be focused on her own survival. She looked at me like she could see every layer, the corporate career, the Catholicism, the survival self, decades of performing. They were all transparent to her. She saw me like Wendy saw me. Like no one's ever seen me. Not the me that most people see, the me underneath it. And something shifted in that time in London that nothing before has ever touched. For the first time, I was witnessed by two women, fully, without condition, without agenda. And that question that I've been asking my entire life, who am I? And that empty feeling vanished. It got dissolved. Because she saw me, I remembered. And in being seen, I no longer had to search for it. And that's what witnessing does, that nothing else does. I came back from that trip in London. I knew I was seen, but I didn't know witnessing. And I did some of my own work. And one day I had this question, because I truly believe our souls are here for a deeper mission. Why would a soul come into this world without any identification? I couldn't identify with my parents. I knew who my biological mother was, but I didn't know what I got from her. I didn't know my father at all. My adopted mother gave me a lot of things, but I didn't look like her. I didn't act like her. And I really was like, why would a soul come into this world without anything that identifies them? Why would they grow up without choose to have any witnesses? And then it dawned on me, because I had to become my own first witness. And there is a power and a strength in that. And this is why I do this for other people. Because to me, there's no other great achievement in this world for you to come back to yourself, to see yourself for the first time without flinching, to come back and remember who you are. Witnessing is not someone validating your feelings. It is someone telling, it's not someone telling you enough, you're enough. Witnessing is when someone sees past all of this and can see this all the way to the truth, all the way to who you truly are, not who you built to survive, the one underneath. And when you're seen there, truly seen there, by someone who can hold that frequency without flinching, something happens that no amount of self-reflection, of courses, of books can produce. Because here's the nature of the thing. The constructed self is the lens through which you see everything. So when you're in this constructed self, it's creating this lens through which you're looking through. And you're trying to find yourself out here in this lens. It becomes the frame. And here's what I learned through my own self-discovery and through working with women, is you cannot see the frame inside the frame. This is why complete insight into your conditioning doesn't set you free from it. The conditioned self is the one doing the understanding. When you're taking courses, when you're reading books, the conditioned self is the one that information has to go through, because that's the lens in which you are seeing. What witnessing does is step outside of that frame with you and reflect back what you cannot see from the inside. It's bringing your focus and attention out here so that you can see this. So what Wendy did is she helped me see my truth. Something that I would not have been able to find because I was doing it through the conditioning. Laura, the Vietnamese woman, she bypassed every layer of the constructed self and reflected back my true signal. The one that had been there before the overriding began. And neither of them were there to help me feel better. They were there to see me, to see my truth. And in being seen there, all of this, every part of it, my soul's mission, all of it became visible. And once you can see the frame, you are no longer entirely inside it. That's the shift. That's the shift. That's the work. It's not a therapeutic breakthrough. It's a genuine change in vantage point. It becomes a choice that you now get to make. You didn't get to choose your conditioning. Now we can say from a soul perspective, maybe let's take that out of that. From a child, you didn't get to choose your conditioning. But when you see your truth, when you see your truth and you can see the conditioning for the first time, you have this awareness and you have a choice now. You see, we don't go back into the conditioning to find your true self. We go toward your true self. We come right in here and we expand this so that you can neutralize this noise. Because when we come in here and we help you to see this, I know it looks like a big mess now. When we go in and help you see this, what's been in the way, it just shows up on its own. It's magic. It's magic. It really is. Changing your perspective is magic. And this is the Michelangelo Principle in practice. We're not building a better you. We're not trying to fix you. We're removing what was never yours until what was always there becomes visible. You see, your signal was never lost. It was buried, and it's been waiting for you. So I want to leave you with something, a question. Find 15 minutes alone. I'll tell you, space is the most underrated thing. And what I mean by space is that just time alone, just you, just you. And I want you to sit with the question, not to answer it, but to notice what it brings up. When in my life have I been truly seen? I want you to ask that question. When in my life have I been truly seen? Not complimented, not validated, seen. Where someone reflected back something true that saw you like no one's seen you before. A truth that they simply perceived without being shown it. And if that moment comes, I want you to notice what it felt like in your body. I want you to try and go back and notice what that felt like. And my guess is that that stayed with you for a while, if it still isn't something that comes up. That is what your original signal, your original truth feels like when it gets reflected back. And if no moment comes where you felt like you've been seen, that's also data. It means the hunger, the thing you're carrying is real. And it means you're exactly in the right place. You built the best mirror you had access to. That's survival. The work now is returning to what was there before that mirror was built. So this is the first video in this series, and each of them build upon each other to help you see this work, this methodology even deeper. What happens in the absence of witnessing, that's the next video. So you built one out of or you weren't giving a mirror, so you built one out of everybody else's eyes. And each video stands on its own, but it's building this complete argument. And so if today landed somewhere in you, hit the subscribe button for me so you don't miss what's coming. I'm going to put next week's video in the comments below. And if you're already past the point of needing another video, like you're ready to find your truth and you're ready to do the actual work, then send me a comment, remember. And that's how we begin our conversation about the shift. And there's no pressure. It's just whether it's the right container for where you are. It really is. I'm not here to sell. I'm here to help you figure out that next step for you. I'm Donna Kendall. I'm the rememberer. I bring you back to your soul signal to reveal your truth, so you start living from it. I'll see you in the next video. The warmest love to you. Take care.